The Cabinet was only appointed 6 weeks ago. The Home Secretary's been sacked, the Chancellor sacked, the Chief Whip sacked and then unsacked. Conservative MPs last night fighting like rats in a sack. This is a disgrace. Former Home Secretary has just been running her ongoing leadership campaign, whilst the current Home Secretary is too busy to come to the House because he's doing his spreadsheets on the numbers for whoever he is backing to come next.
We're now going to the urgent question. I now call the Shadow Home Secretary, Yvette Cooper.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. To ask the Home Secretary to make a statement on the departure of his predecessor.
Minister.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. I thank the honourable lady for her question. Mr Speaker, my right honourable friend, the member for Fareham, resigned yesterday following a contravention of the Ministerial Code relating to a breach of Cabinet confidentiality and the rules relating to the security of government business. The Prime Minister has made clear the importance of maintaining high standards in public life and her expectation that ministers should uphold these standards as set out in the Ministerial Code. All ministers are personally responsible for deciding how to act and conduct themselves in the light of the Code and for justifying their actions and conduct to Parliament and the public. However, ministers only remain in office so long as they retain the confidence of the Prime Minister. She is the ultimate judge of the standards of behaviour expected of a minister and the appropriate consequences of a breach of those standards. My right honourable friend has explained her decision to resign. And to be clear, the information that was circulated was subject to Cabinet confidentiality and under live discussion within the Government. In light of this, it would not be appropriate to discuss the specifics of the matter further in the House, but the Prime Minister is clear that the security of government business is paramount, as is Cabinet responsibility. The Prime Minister paid tribute to my right honourable friend's service as Home Secretary, noting that her time in office was marked by a steadfast commitment to keeping the British people safe and overseeing the largest ever ceremonial policing operation when thousands of officers were deployed from forces across the United Kingdom to ensure the safety of the royal family for all those who gathered in mourning for Her late Majesty the Queen. Having accepted my right honourable friend's resignation, the Prime Minister acted decisively to appoint my right honourable friend, the member for Welwyn-Hatfield, as Home Secretary yesterday afternoon. I hold the new Home Secretary in the highest regard and note that he is already getting on with the job, keeping the people of this country safe.
Yvette Cooper.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. I notice there's no Home Secretary this morning, unless the member for Bassett Law has been appointed Home Secretary in the last few hours, which, to be honest, nothing would surprise us at the moment, because this is total chaos. We've got the third Home Secretary in 7 weeks. The Cabinet was only appointed 6 weeks ago. The Home Secretary's been sacked, the Chancellor sacked, the Chief Whip sacked and then unsacked, and the unedifying scenes of Conservative MPs last night fighting like rats in a sack. This is a disgrace. The former Home Secretary has circulated a letter, and that seems to contradict what the Minister just said, because she said it was a draft of a written ministerial statement that was due to be published imminently and had already been briefed to MPs. Is that not true? Can he explain the answer to that? And can he tell us also what time the Home Secretary informed the Cabinet Secretary of the breach, and whether a check's been made of whether she sent other documents through personal emails putting security at risk? Was there a 90-minute row about policy between the Prime Minister and the former Home Secretary? And given the huge disagreements we have seen over the last few weeks between the Home Secretary and the Prime Minister on drugs policy, on Rwanda, on the India trade deal, on seasonal agriculture, on small boats, and a bit of tofu thrown in over the lettuce for good measure, is there anything that the policy is actually agreed on in the Cabinet on home affairs? What we know is that the former Home Secretary has just been running her ongoing leadership campaign, whilst the current Home Secretary is too busy to come to the House because he's doing his spreadsheets on the numbers for whoever he is backing to come next. But who is taking decisions on our national security? Not the Prime Minister, not the past or current Home Secretaries. Borders, security, policing are too important for this kind of instability, just as people's livelihoods are too important for the economic instability that this Conservative Party has created. It is not fair on people, and to quote the former Home Secretary, this is indeed a total coalition of chaos. Why should the country have to put up with this for a single extra day?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'm sure my right honourable friend will be aware that breaches of the Ministerial Code are a matter for the Cabinet Office, not the Home Office, and that is why I am here answering the question today and not the Home Secretary. But the Prime Minister took advice from the Cabinet Secretary, as you saw from her letter, and she is clear that it is important the Ministerial Code is upheld and Cabinet responsibility is respected. The Prime Minister expects ministers to hold the highest standards, and you've seen her act consistently in this regard. But these were breaches of the Code. The Prime Minister expects her ministers to uphold the Ministerial Code, as the public would also rightly expect, and she took the requisite advice from the Cabinet Secretary before taking this decision. And I'm mindful it's not usual policy to comment in detail on matters like this, Mr. Speaker, but if it would be helpful with background, and appreciating much of this is already in the public domain, the documents in question contain draft government policy which remains subject to Cabinet Committee agreement. Having this on a personal email account and then also sharing outside of government constituted clear breaches of the Code, sections 2.14 and 2.3, if helpful to look at. The Prime Minister is clear that the security of government business is paramount, as is Cabinet responsibility, and ministers must be held to the highest standards.